Hello and welcome back. Last time we talked about lesson 2.09, wordplay 3. This time we're going to be going over 210, poetry. So I'm going to click on that, go scroll up so that I can see it. And we're going to start with the introduction. Poetry. Have you ever heard of the traditional Japanese form of poetry called haiku? Today you will read about haiku and learn a bit about the form's history and characteristics. Slide 2. There's our student guide. So I'm going to go ahead and download the student guide. I'm going to minimize this just a little bit so that I'm sure that you're seeing it. The bottom part of my screen. There we go. All right, and on this one, we do have a graphic organizer to download. It goes over the class objectives, and we do have some keywords. Dialect, a way of speaking that is particular to a certain group of people, place, or time. Figurative language. You should know this, we've been talking about it a lot. Language that uses figures of speech such as metaphors, simile, and personification for poetic effect, rather than for precise factual meaning. For example, her eyes are stars is figurative language, in contrast to the literal use of stars, and the stars are shining tonight. Universal theme, an idea or question that has appeared in many cultures, literature throughout history. And that's all, but I'm going to go ahead and download this graphic organizer, so I'll have that ready to fill out later. And we click open. And we are going to, hold on, we're going to enable editing. We have to get rid of that yellow bar so we can type right into it. Put our names, maybe the date if you'd like, and I'm just going to move this off to the side. When we are reading our poem, some of the things we're going to be looking at are what type of text. Well, in this case, it's probably going to be a poem, a haiku. How do you know that it's that type of text? Well, as we learn about what a haiku consists of, we can put that here. What is the author's purpose for writing the poem? What is their meaning? Summarize the poem. How's the text arranged? Chronological, and it probably won't be. It's going to be question. What is the tone of the poem? How do the images or text help you know the meaning? Summarize that text. What happened in the poem? What is the main idea of the poem? One piece of information that supports that main idea. Another piece. Give an example if it has a fact, an example of opinion. You might not be able to fill out all these with a haiku poem because they're very short, but if it's there, you can put it. What is the author's tone or attitude? And then summarize how the text relates to you. How can you relate to the poem? So you'll fill that out as you read each poem. All right, back to this tab. And we're ready to move on to Module 1. Haiku's masters. Haiku poetry is a unique form of poetry that has specific rules and characteristics. Some of the most famous writers of haiku were Basho and Issa. Basho is probably the most well-known creator of haiku poetry. Basho is the pen name of Matsu Manafusa, who was born in Japan in 1644. Though Basho's family was part of the upper class, the young poet rejected a life of wealth and privilege. He chose instead to wander from place to place, study philosophy and history, and write poetry. Basho's work reflected his life of gentle thought and meditation. He wrote about universal themes, but tried to connect these themes to simple aspects of the natural world. And universal themes are an idea or question that has appeared in many cultures, literature throughout history. Basho lived in Edo, now Tokyo, and he died in 1694. Slide 2. Poetic legacy. Issa is the pen name of Yataro Nobuki, lived after Basho, and his poetry was undoubtedly influenced by Basho's work. Issa was born in Japan in 1763. He left home at age 13 and lived for many years in poverty in Edo, which was Japan, or Tokyo. At age 25, Issa began to study and write haiku. Around 1791, however, Issa left Edo and began to travel to many different places. He continued to write haiku, often incorporating local dialects into his work. And dialects is a way of speaking that is particular to a certain group of people, place, or time. As a result, Issa's poetry is less philosophical and more personal than many other haiku poets' work. In his later life, Issa returned to his home village, married twice, and had 5 children. However, only one child survived, a daughter, who was born just before Issa died in 1827. All right, moving forward to Module 2, sorry. Read, do you want to write haiku? Let's check out the article, Do You Want to Write Haiku? As you read, try to visualize some of the ideas the author is describing. Read Cricket Haiku and Do You Want to Write Haiku? They are found in Literature for Young Readers, Volume 6. Use the reading graphic organizer to apply reading strategies. So that one you pulled up, you may not have something like I said in every one, but especially like the mood of the poem, if you see any figurative language in there, it's just for you to take notes on so that you can have and use on the test on 1.12. So you can download it again, or like if you have it off to the side or minimized, that's it right there. And then I'm going to click on this literature, and you may have to search a little bit because it may not take you exactly where we are. You need to remember that you're in Unit 2, Poetry and Persuasion. So we're going to click there first. And then we're going to go down to there's the haiku. So once you get to Poetry and Persuasion, you just click this next arrow, and it takes you to the Cricket Haiku. So here's the Cricket Haiku by Helga Sandberg. When I was in Japan a number of years ago, I visited Mrs. Kazuko Azaki, the Japanese artist who drew the crickets on the next page. Her husband was a doctor at the University of Hiroshima, and they invited me to their house. After beautiful cakes and tea had been served, she brought out her paint tin and brushes. Her black hair was combed up high, her kimono was gray and silky, and her hands were small and delicate. She knelt on the floor and drew swiftly, taking 5 minutes to complete and sign each picture. She made 6 or 7 of bamboo shoots, fish, and vegetables, cucumbers, eggplant, squash, besides the ones of crickets. I think her cricket pictures go beautifully with those short Japanese poems called haiku. For hundreds of years, the poets in Japan have been writing haiku. One of the greatest of the haiku writers lived 300 years ago. His name was Basho. 2 other famous haiku writers lived 100 years ago. Busan, who wrote more coolly than Baso, and Issa, who was less poetic but more lovable and tender. Everyone in Japan, from the emperor to the poorest man or woman, tries to write haiku when he or she feels like it. It can take a few minutes or a year or more to write a good haiku, and it is very hard to translate haiku into English without destroying the Japanese flavor, feeling, and atmosphere. When you have read these cricket haiku, learn how you can begin writing your own haiku. The cheerful cricket, chirping, keeps late summer gay, contemptuous of frost. Basho. That's just one poem. Here's another haiku. They're very short. Now be a good boy. Take good care of your house. Cricket, my child. Such utter silence. Even the crickets singing, muffled by hot rocks. Basho. A bright autumn moon, in the shadow of each grass, a cricket chirping. Bushan. I must turn over. Beware of local earthquakes. Bedfellow cricket. Aisha. I'm going out. Be good and play together, my cricket children. Aisha. There's the pictures of the crickets that we talked about from the artist before. They look like silhouettes of the crickets. All right. As you fill out, did you notice any figurative language in any of these? What was the mood and tone of some of them? Do you get any author's purpose from these? Why do you think the author or the poet wrote them? Write down your ideas. You can pause the video and come back when you're done. All right. Do you want to write haiku? By Marian Colin Livingston. If things were better for me, flies, I'd invite you to share my supper. Basho. Some of you may recognize that this short poem, written in just 17 syllables, is called a haiku. Haiku poetry has been written in Japan for centuries and has become popular in the United States during the past 40 years. But there are some specific rules for writing haiku, and many people do not know about them. Often, all they do know is that the poem is made up of 17 syllables. That is usually written in 3 lines, and that it does not use rhyme. It would be impossible to list all of the rules about writing haiku, but the most important thing to know is that the word haiku itself means a beginning phrase. The haiku was originally the beginning of a longer poem, and the first 17 syllables were written to introduce the reader to the rest of the poem. Today, haiku is considered a form in itself. The first rule for writing haiku is that the poem must always refer to something in nature or use what is called a season word. Many of the haiku you read refer to nature symbols of Japan, but unless you live in or have visited Japan, you will be better off writing about things you know. For instance, if you read about a cherry blossom in Japanese haiku, it means spring. If you live in the United States, you might want to write about snowdrops, crocuses, or daffodils instead. You do not have to use the term spring, summer, autumn, or winter to identify the season when you write a haiku. If you use the word snow, for example, it becomes a season word for winter. Another rule is that the haiku must be about one thing only. A haiku is not a poem that describes several different subjects or events. A good writer of haiku observes one thing carefully and writes about only that. The third rule is that haiku must be written as though you are seeing it or experiencing what you're writing about. It should happen now, not yesterday or the day before or last year. Therefore, haiku is usually written in the present tense. The next rule is that a good haiku must present a clear picture of something you want to write about further. It paints a picture in words that stirs your imagination and makes you eager to find out more. Look back at the haiku of Basho, related to English by Harry Bin, at the beginning of this article. See how it follows the rules. First, it is written in 17 syllables without rhyme. Okay, let's look. Oh, I'm going to back up. Let's count the syllables. If things were better, that's 5 in the first line. For me, flies, I'd invite you, 7. To share my supper, 5. So it goes 5, 7, 5. That's a haiku. 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. Doesn't have to rhyme. Now, supper and better kind of do rhyme, but it doesn't have to. It does need to be about nature, so they're talking about flies here and supper, but it's mostly about, the flies. Usually it's something in nature. So if it's a ton of flies, when do you think, what time of year do you have the most flies? For me, it's always summer here. So maybe they're talking about summer. They definitely are talking about food too, because they're saying supper. So the flies are certainly a part of nature and a season word for summertime. Yay, we got that. This haiku is about just one thing, someone talking to flies. And even though it was written many years ago, it sounds as though the conversation was happening this very minute. So it's happening in the present. Finally, think about the picture this haiku suggests. Is it a king sitting at a banquet table brushing away flies? What sort of person is speaking? The words, if things were better for me. Does that give you a clue? The man or woman speaking would like to share some food with the flies, but apparently things are so bad that he or she can't even spare a few. So probably not a king, probably someone living in poverty. Crumbs. The picture then is of someone who must be very poor. Each of us will see something different in the words and will probably want to know more. Who is this person? What made him or her poor? And how does he or she speak to the flies? In a complaining or sad or humorous voice. This haiku arouses our imaginations and get us thinking about the picture Basho has painted in words. Imagine how dull it would be if he had written, once there was a poor person who had so little to eat that when the flies came, he had to apologize to them for not sharing his food. Perhaps one of the most important things to remember about writing a haiku is that you do not write it as 3 short sentences with a period at the end of each line. The best haiku are written as one single thought or sentence, just as Basho wrote his. Remember, too, that when you have only 17 syllables, it's important to choose your words carefully and not repeat any. Look at the haiku about crickets. Even though they are all written about the same thing, each one presents a different picture and feeling. 3 of these haiku mention the season. Bhushan tells us about an autumn moon, and Basho writes about late summer. But look at the 3rd haiku. The words hot rocks are a season word because they let us know that it is summer. The 3 haiku written by Aisha do not mention the season, but we know that crickets usually appear in summer or fall, and so we imagine the season for ourselves. Notice too that all of these haiku are written as a single thought or sentence. Perhaps you would like to try writing a haiku about something you have seen. A good way to do this is to look outside or take a walk. Perhaps you will see a snail as Isa did. Let's go back real quick and look at those. Those ones about cricket. Okay, see, cheerful cricket, late summer. So it mentions the one. It's all one sentence. The cheerful cricket chirping keeps late summer gay, contemptuous of frost. It's one sentence. 5, 7, 5. Now be a good boy, take care of our house, cricket, my child. Doesn't mention the season, but again, because it's about crickets, we figure out the time of year. And it's one sentence. And it's happening in the present, even though it was written long ago, the way it's written is written in present tense. And it's about one thing, the cricket talking to a cricket. And then here we have autumn mentioned. So there we have the season. And there's where it talks about the hot rocks right there. Silence, utter silence, even the crickets singing, muffled by hot rocks. So even though it doesn't say it's summertime, that link right there, hot rocks, gives us the idea that it must be summer. Okay. Well, hello down there, friend Snail. When did you arrive in such a hurry? Or you may wish to warn butterflies as the poet Shoshin did. Butterflies beware. Need big intels of pines can be sharp in a gusty wind. If you are just beginning to write haiku, you may find it easier to write as though you're talking to whatever subject you choose, a butterfly, a cricket, a fly, a snail, or even the moon, stars, sun, wind, or rain. It's not easy to write a good haiku, but you can be proud of it. You can be proud if you write one that gives others a vivid picture of something you've seen. Choose your words well so that your friend's imagination will be aroused by your haiku. And I think this one is for the next lesson. Yes, I believe that it is. Okay, so that's where we'll stop there in our reading. Going to go back here and go to next. Check your reading. After you've finished reading, do you want to write a haiku? Answer the following questions. Which of the following are characteristics of haiku poetry? Select all that apply so you may have more than one. Haiku poetry is non-rhyming. Yep. Haiku poetry contains 17 syllables. Yep. Haiku poetry is always serious and somber. Not necessarily. Haiku poetry deals with nature. Yes. Let's see if we're right. Boop, boop. Okay, so what we're going to do here is, again, open up our document that we saved. Oh, and I forgot to show you how to save it. File, save as, this PC. And I'm going to put in here ELA 2.12 review document. There we go. That's how you save it. And then since we're starting a new, and of course you should have a lot more notes than this from 109. But to start 110, you're going to just start 110 over here. And I'm going to go number 1. And I'm going to copy the question. Right click and choose that middle one so that it copies it right. And instead of doing number 2, I want to do the answer. And so you're going to need to copy and paste each one of these answers in there as well. So copy and paste and copy and paste and copy and paste. And then if you want to put the explanation, put EX and copy and paste. And that's what you'll do for each one. I'm going to backspace out and put number 2 so that I know I'm ready for the second one. Question number 2. What do season words indicate in a haiku? A, season words indicate the time of year during which the haiku takes place. B, season words indicate the mood of the haiku. C, season words indicate the length of the haiku. Or D, season words indicate the rhyme scheme of the haiku. Choose your answer. Check your answer. Once you know the correct answer, copy and paste the question and correct answer and possibly the explanation into your review document. Pause the recording if you need to. Come back when you're ready. All right, moving on to question 3. Why is haiku poetry usually written in the present tense? A, there is no past tense in the Japanese language. B, the present tense is the funniest tense and haiku poetry is meant to be humorous. C, the present tense makes the impact on the reader more immediate. D, the present tense allows readers to finish these poems more quickly. Choose your answer, check your answer. Once you know the correct answer, copy and paste the question correct answer into your review document. Question number 4. Haiku poetry is meant to A, explain a subject completely, B, stir the imaginations of readers and make people want to read or think more, C, make fun of people who don't like poetry, D, retell famous stories that have been passed down for generations. Choose your answer. Check your answer. Once you know the correct answer, copy and paste the question correct answer into your review document. Last question. Livingston writes that the best haiku are often written A, from several different points of view, B, to the beloved from his or her admirer, C, in times of great stress, or D, as one single thought or sentence. Choose your answer. Check your answer. Once you know the correct answer, copy and paste the question and correct answer in your review document. Now that you have all of your questions and correct answers in your review document, you're ready to move on to Module 4. The rules of haiku. Let's review some of the information presented in the article. Haiku has been a very specific form which follows several rules. How well do you understand the rules of haiku? Okay, we have phrase, 17, nature, season, words, one, present, tense. There are some important rules to remember when writing a haiku. First, remember that the word haiku means a beginning blank. Beginning phrase. And that a haiku has exactly 17 syllables. The haiku must always refer to something in, looks like it's going in order again, nature. Writers of a haiku often use, could it be season and words? Season words in order to help their reader identify the seasons they are referencing. The haiku must be about one subject. The third rule is that the haiku should occur in the present tense as it were happening to you as you write. All right, let's check. Yay! And you can try to replay if you'd like. The rules in action. Let's examine how the rules apply to an actual haiku, cricket haiku. You can notice rule number 2 in the title. The haiku must reference only one subject, so it's about crickets. A bright autumn moon. In the shadow of each grass, a cricket chirping. Okay, so autumn moon. Autumn moon, here's the season word that uses requirement 1, that the haiku must reference something in nature. In the shadow, notice how the poet writes that the cricket in the shadow. This meets requirement number 3. The haiku should take place in the present. A cricket chirping. After you read this poem, you can picture an image. Do you want to know more about or why this cricket is important, or why the poet chose him as a subject? Requirement 4 states that the poem should paint a picture with words and leave the reader wanting more. Number 1, how many syllables are in line 1? A bright autumn moon. Answer, there are 5 syllables in line 1. How many syllables are in line 2? In the shadow of each grass. I counted 7. Yep, there are 7 syllables in line 2. How many syllables are in line 3? A cricket chirping. I count 5. Yep, there are 5 syllables in line 3. Does this haiku fulfill the syllable count as a requirement? Well, 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 7 gives us 17, so I would say yeah. This haiku does fulfill the requirement of 17 syllables with 5 in the first line, 7 in the second, and 5 in the third. Slide 3. Excuse me. And do you want to write a haiku? The author outlines 4 main steps or rules to writing a haiku. Let's review those. Number 1, what is the first step or rule for writing a haiku? The poem must refer to something in nature. To do this, authors of haiku typically use season words to trigger the reader's understanding. These can be words that refer to the plant life or weather of a particular familiar season. What is the second rule? The next step is to choose just one subject as the topic. A good haiku writer observes only one thing and then writes about it. What is the third? Write about the topic in the present tense. A good haiku poet writes as if he or she We're seeing and experiencing it right now. How does it all fit together? Think carefully about the subject. Paint a picture using words. The reader should want to know more about the subject after reading the haiku. What is the form of haiku? Haiku poems have 3 lines with a total of 17 syllables. Line 1 has 5, line 2 has 7, and line 3 has 5. Follow this step-by-step procedure to become a haiku writer. We're ready for Module 5. Cricket haiku. Let's review some examples of haiku. As you read Cricket haiku by Issa and Basho, think about the following questions. How are the haiku of these poets similar? Focus on their subject matter and the way in which they depict crickets. How are these poems different? Focus on the speaker's voice, the mood, and the audience to whom the poems are addressed. To really understand the poems, you should read each haiku multiple times. After all, that's a lot of information to absorb in 17 syllables. Let's examine some of the similarities and differences between the cricket haiku. All right, we've got Basho's deals with crickets, so they both deal with crickets. They both show crickets in a positive light. And in Basho's, cricket is described as cheerful, and in Aisha's, they're referred to as children. And children generally are cheerful, so that's kind of similar. The differences, Basho's poem is more thoughtful, whereas Aisha's poem is more direct. Basho uses crickets to describe a moment, and Aisha speaks directly to the crickets. Basho has a more serious mood, where Aisha's is more cheerful and upbeat. Season words. As you know, haiku poetry uses certain words to indicate the time of year in which a poem is taking place. Wait a minute, did I do all of that? Let me make sure. Okay, yes, we did. And if you want to look back at them, of course, you can always go back in here and back up and look at Basho's and Aisha's examples of cricket. You go back even further. There you go. You can look at some of Basho. See, cheerful cricket. And then Aisha is a child. And this is more serious. This has more of a lighthearted tone. Okay. So we are ready for Module 6. Season words. As you know, haiku poetry uses certain words to indicate the time of year in which a poem is taking place. These words are called season words. However, season words are not necessarily the names of the season. In many cases, they are words that one would associate with certain seasons. For example, a haiku that mentions snow or ice most likely takes place in the winter, while one that mentions flowers blooming probably takes place in the spring. Such utter silence, even the crickets singing, muffled by hot rocks. Which words indicate the season in this haiku? Do you think you remember? Hot rocks. And again, I would copy and paste this and this question here, and then the answer is hot rocks. Why would the rocks be hot in the summer? Because the sun is hot and it beats down on them all day and they hold in that energy. Remember from science class, rocks hold energy and let them out at night. Some more than others. Oh, slide 3. Such utter silence, even the crickets singing, muffled by hot rocks. Reread Basho's haiku. Based on the descriptions and the season during the poem takes place, which of the following best describes the situation expressed in this piece? A, it is spring and the crickets can be heard singing. B, it is summer and the crickets are singing loud and clear. C, it is summer and there are many animals making noise in the night. Or D, it is summer and it is so completely quiet that one cannot even hear the crickets. Choose your answer. Check your answer. Once you know the correct answer, copy and paste the question and correct answer, and you might even want to copy and paste this poem into your review document. Copy, paste. I'll put Q for question. Copy. Paste. Put A for answer. And I think it's this one. Check it. Nope. Try again. Yep. Okay. Then I know that this is the correct answer, so I'm going to copy. And I'm going to paste. And then if you want to put even the explanation, copy and paste. Back up, and I'm ready for number 3. You should have more than that right now. But next question, is there another? Nope, that's slide 3, so that's it. We are ready for module 7. Figurative language. Have you ever read a story or heard someone talking and the words themselves brought a picture to your mind? For instance, what do you imagine in your mind's eye when you hear of a crackling fire or a roaring wave? This is an example of figurative language. Figurative language that uses figures of speech such as metaphor, simile, and personification for poetic effect rather than for precise factual meaning. For example, her eyes are stars is figurative language in contrast to the literal use of stars in the sentence, the stars are shining tonight. Let's explore the use of figurative language in the cricket haiku poems. Such utter silence. What do you think of when you hear the words utter silence? What kind of picture does this create in your mind? This is an example of imagery. Imagery is a type of figurative language in which the words help to create an image or picture in the mind of the reader. Even the crickets singing. The idea of crickets singing is also a type of figurative language. However, this is better referred to as personification. We typically think of people singing rather than animals or insects. Given human characteristics or behaviors to non-human objects is called personification. Muffled by hot rocks. Number 1, what type of figurative language is illustrated in the first line of the haiku? The first line of the haiku demonstrates the use of imagery. How can you tell? The words muffled by hot rocks presents a picture to the reader. Module 7. Practice identifying figurative language in this activity. Personification is a type of figurative language where the author gives a non-human object certain human qualities. Which line from the cricket haiku uses personification? A, such utter silence. B, cricket my child. Or C, a bright autumn moon. Click on the answer. Check it. When you know the correct answer, copy and paste the question, correct answer, and possible explanation into your review document. Pause the video if you need to, where you can get that done. Come back when you're ready. Okay, question 2. Imagery is when an author uses words to create a visual image in the mind of the reader. Which line from the cricket haiku is an example of imagery? A, the cheerful cricket. B, I must turn over. Or C, muffled by hot rocks. Click on your answer, check it. When you know the correct answer, copy and paste the question and correct answer into your review document. Question 3. What type of figurative language is found in the following lines from the cricket haiku? Be good and play together, my cricket children. A, personification. B, simile. Or C, metaphor. Click on your answer, check it. Once you know the correct answer, copy and paste the question, correct answer, and explanation into your review document. Question 4. What type of figurative language is used in the following lines from the cricket haiku? In the shadow of each grass, a cricket chirping. A, personification. B, imagery. C, alliteration. Click on your answer, check your answer, copy and paste your question, correct answer, and explanation into your review document. Number 5, how does the poet's use of personification help you understand the subject in the following haiku? The cheerful cricket chirping keeps late summer gay, contemptuous of frost. A, using the words such as cheerful and contemptuous to describe the cricket helps the reader to see the insect with human characteristics. B, the words late summer bring vivid images to the reader's mind. Or C, the poet does not use personification in this poem. Click on your answer, check your answer, copy and paste the question, correct answer, and explanation into your review document. Last question. How does the poet's use of imagery help you understand the subject of the following haiku? I must turn over. Beware of local earthquakes. Bedfellow cricket. A, there is no examples of imagery in this poem. B, the way the poet talks to the cricket like a human is part of the imagery of the haiku. Or C, words such as earthquakes and bedfellow help bring the images alive for the reader. Click on your answer, check your answer. Once you know the correct answer, copy and paste the question, correct answer, and explanation into your review document. Once you've got all of these copied and pasted and you know the correct answers, you've got them in your review document, you're ready to move on to Module 8. Haiku. A haiku is a poem that looks simple on the outside, but is actually quite difficult to write. A haiku should be based on nature, should cover one subject, and should help paint a picture for the reader. There are also certain structural requirements for writing a haiku. How many syllables should be in each line of a haiku? Do you remember? There should be 17 total, 5 in the first line, 7 in the middle, and 5 in the last line. And so 5, 7, 5 for a total of 17. As you read or write a haiku, think about your subject. Determine how you want to use figurative language. Remember, a haiku should leave your reader wanting to know more about your subject. And we are done. Thank you for joining me for this lesson. I hope you found it helpful, and I will see you back for lesson 211. Bye.